Hello everyone, Michael here for Tactica Imperialis. Welcome to today's video. Today is going to be a 40k tactics video with some possible crossover into Age of Sigmar, though it's minimal. And what we're going to talk about today is another army build, another army list style that I've sort of crossed over from my time playing Hearthstone. We talked about aggressive lists, we talked about control lists, and now we're going to talk about the lists that bridge the gap, the mid-range list, the tempo list, or as you're probably more familiar of, the momentum list, the list that builds up ahead of steam and then rolls you over. Momentum is a clever damn thing in physics, because I'm a physicist. It's always conserved, meaning that if one side gains momentum, the other side loses momentum. And you can very easily exploit this imbalance in momentum. Pick up ahead of steam and your opponent is behind. Force your opponent to do something that causes them to lose momentum, and you're ahead. Very simple principle. Not the easiest thing to pull off. And today we're going to talk about the lists that maximize this and get the best tempo game possible. Now, a warning before we get started. Tempo lists are not easy to play. They require a lot of adaptability and a lot of manipulation. They require you to think on your feet and in a wide, vast range of ways. You have to be able to think fast and think quick, think clever. You've got to be able to do that. Otherwise, you're going to get outmaneuvered and outthought by your opponent. This is why mid-range armies are generally played, well, this is why the mid-range armies are generally not the most common. Space Marines kind of work as a mid-range list if you build them the right way, although they can be very easily optimized. Eldar are probably the best mid-range list I know. They can play very defensively, turtle up, lots of wraith, defense, sit there, shoot you in the face. Or they can go the jet bike approach and go full face, whiz around you, completely screw you up with jetpack moves and all sorts of nonsense. And they can change between those styles on a whim. That's what makes Eldar so dangerous. Never mind their psychic nonsense and wraith BS. Their adaptability is what's so scary. That's why they're so good against so many armies. They're so adaptable. And in the hands of a good general, will ruin anybody's day. So let's talk army competition, because any list starts when it's being built. How do you make a take-all-comers flexible list? Well, you do away with gimmicks. No gimmicks, no themes, no synergy. Everything has to just work. It sounds boring as hell, but trust me, this is not about getting combos to work. Because if you rely on combos in a list that has to change its style and throw things away at the drop of a hat, you're going to lose. Control lists are better suited to playing combos because they play defensively and they cover each other's back until they can execute the combination. Aggro lists are too fragile to execute combos, and mid-range lists are too flexible. Combos require a ton of setup, and you can't get that playing a flexible tempo list. So anything that's combo related or synergy related, gone. Immediately. Except Psychers, because Psychers have their own thing, because they don't always have to use synergy, they can just straight up beat ass. So use them for that as well. The second thing that goes is any gimmick. So if you have units that are themed around camping, they can go. They can go wherever the Emperor's other eye went. Just gone. Because they restrict that portion of your points to a certain style. It's all well and good investing in 5 squads, in transport, in fast transports, / with bikes, / with jump packs. But what if you're forced to play defensively? What if you can't rush up the board because your opponent's going to completely mess you up if you do? Well, those units are now useless. Other than being a good roadblock, I guess. But that's a waste. You have to have units that can do anything. Troop units are the most flexible units in the game, so use them. You're looking at probably 2 or 3 troop choices, depending on your army. And you will at least consider having one of them in a transport vehicle, because you need the forward and backward capability of a transport. The ability to go forward and grab objectives, or the ability to protect a unit in the case of things like wave serpents, rhinos, and chimeras. Because guard can also play, but they're better suited to playing control. Then comes deployment and first turn, because you're playing a tempo game. So you need the initiative. You need to be ahead of your opponent from the get-go. So you want first turn every time. Not because you want your opponent to get the better deployment, not because you want that side of the table, although that helps. You need to be ahead. You need to force your opponent to react to you. If you're playing a proactive game, your opponent is reacting to you, meaning you are ahead on tempo. If you're playing a reactive game, your opponent has the tempo. They are dictating the flow of the game, and this cannot be acceptable. So you need to be on the front foot from the word go, and that means deploying first if you can. Your opponent will probably see straight through this and deploy first anyway. But if you can get it, try and find a way to manipulate, seize the initiative so as you can get a chance to steal that tempo back. Because the longer you're behind, the harder it is to come back. So, let's say you get to go first. You get to deploy first. What do? Well, you make your opponent scared of you. It's all up here. This game is as much about the mind games as it is about the physical dice games. Because you have to scare your opponent into making mistakes. In a straight fight, tempo v tempo, it can be a simple misstep that costs the game. So you want to make your opponent make that mistake and force it out of them. Deploy in a very provocative manner. Force them to react to your deployment or get in trouble. On turn one, get into a position that suits you. If they're playing an aggressive list, sit back, chill. Maybe advance a little bit, like a control list would. Come out a touch, so you're not dealing with the aggro assault on your turn, on your table edge. But make sure that you have the initiative to take them out. Don't let them pull off a 1-2 punch on you, because that's what's going to destroy you. That's why aggro lists are so effective, because if they get the 1-2 punch, they win the game. If they don't, they often lose. So once you've done that, you've got yourself set up, you're off and running, turn one has gone swimmingly, okay? What do you do after that? Well, you establish a tempo lead and you force it down your opponent's throat until they choke on it. You need to force your opponent into reacting to you. I don't care how you do it, but you have to force them into thinking, I'm going to have to get rid of this or I'm screwed. Your play style is as proactive as possible. You cannot react to your opponent because that puts him in front, him or her in front. And that's not what you want. You want to be on the front foot, pushing and pushing and pushing until your opponent just breaks. So if you are going first, play proactively. Force the advantage of going first and make your opponent deal with it. If you're going second, it's hard to get back in front. Because if your opponent is playing anything but a control list, which is very defensive, they have the early game start on you, and coming back from that can be a bit of an issue. So you have to play the first couple of turns like a control list. Pick off the bits that are causing you problems, take them out, and start pushing your own agenda with everything else. So they have a fast unit, deal with it with everything you need to, and then everything else just pushes and sorts out what you want the board to look like. Dictate the game. Take out your opponent's threats so as he cannot set up what they want to do, and then do what you want to do. Make them play your game. Because if you can do that, you force them into making desperate moves in the late game or the mid game to stabilize, to stay in the game. And if they don't pull it off perfectly, they lose every time. So you transition into the mid game. Now we're talking turn 3 and 4. What do you need to do? You need to keep obviously pushing the advantage, and you need to play a game of sacrifice. Now, sacrificing units sounds like anathema. It sounds like the worst possible idea in a list that is so driven by tempo. But trust me, it works. Think about it. Your opponent needs to cap an objective. It's worth like 1 or 2 points to them. What am I going to do? Well, let's rush this unit onto that objective. excuse me, you rush your unit up, you cap it. Even if it scores you nothing, you cap it. Because now, excuse me, sorry. So now, you're on the objective. What's your opponent going to do? Clear you off. What's that going to do? Take time and resources that they might not have because they've got to deal with what you're doing. If you're forcing them to divert resources to deal with your unit that you've willingly sacrificed on that objective, they're losing momentum. And by the law of conservation of momentum, as I mentioned earlier, if they're losing it, you're gaining it. It puts them either further behind, or if they're slightly ahead, stabilizes things and allows you to force your agenda coming up. Same thing with the board. Sacrificing the board is something I generally would not advise. Board control is a list and a style I love playing control. I think it's one of the better ways to play the game because, well, I just like playing control. But giving up an area of the board and saying to your opponent, okay, I give up. That's your board now. Take it. You have it. I'm fine with that. But while you're doing that, I'm just going to completely pull all my resources and completely smash this side of the board and get exactly what I need. I'll score my points. GG. You have to think about what you're willing to get rid of in order to win. What happens if my opponent caps that 2 points for free? Well, they're in front because their army is still dealing with everything and he scored 2 free points. But what if I put a unit there? He's going to have to deal with that unit and he might not have the resources right there in the unit that's going to cap to deal with it. So what's he going to do? He's going to have to divert more resources and that's going to lose him the tempo and I'll have the tempo to deal with him later. Or, well, this unit over here, like holding it for me, I'm probably not going to draw it. I've already drawn it. I've scored my points for it. It's a bit of a pain now. I don't really need it. Let's just leave it. My opponent can have it even if it scores on 1 or 2 points. But while they're doing that, they're going to be locked out of my side of the board because, well, I've got nothing over there. So everything over here is just going to destroy him. Sacrificing what you don't need in order to gain an advantage elsewhere on the board. Do that and you gain that momentum. And once you've built up that momentum, your opponent has to make crazy comeback plays. Now, you can't play around these crazy comebacks. There's always one laced into every game, pretty much. Seeing it is a nightmare. Even if you're really, really good, seeing it is a nightmare. Your opponent probably won't see it, but if they do, they'll push for it. They'll see, okay, here's how I'm going to get back in the game. If I do this, and everything works, I'm back in the game. And even if you do see it, let them try. Because if they pull it off, what you should do is set up a web of countermeasures. Yeah, sure, if they pull this plan off, they're going to score 2 points and kill 2 units. Cool. But I'm going to then completely destroy everything else. Game over. And if it doesn't work, if even one part of that critical comeback plan fails, well, forget it. The plan failed. They're out of it. And once you've tried the crazy comeback, once you've gone all in on that comeback, if it doesn't work, you're out of resource. You're dead. You just lose. And that's so, so valuable. In the late game, it varies. If you're ahead, just keep pushing your game. Keep forcing your opponent into a corner. Because there's nothing to stop them pulling a turn 7 crazy comeback. Or a turn 6 one that you just don't have the time to react to. So you still have to keep pushing your agenda right to the end. Don't get distracted. Don't think about capping. Just keep doing what you've got to do to win the game. If you're behind, well, this is the problem. This is why tempo lists have a problem. If they run out of steam and their opponent gets ahead on tempo, they struggle to come back without being the guy making the crazy sacrificial play. If it comes off, sure, you have a chance. But again, if it doesn't come off, you're dead. End of discussion. So tempo lists, kind of like aggro lists, rely on getting a good start. But against aggro, you won't get that good start because aggro is so much more aggravating, I guess. So you have to be able to weather the aggro storm with the resilience of control and then push it out like a control list. And that's why it's so difficult to play tempo. Because, well, one, you've got to be able to flip your playstyle depending on who your opponent is. And you've got to be able to deal with the power of an aggressive list. They're rare, I grant you. But if you get run over by a horde of bugs, what are you going to do? How are you going to come back from it? You have to be able to think about, well, if it all goes belly up, all goes Pete Tong, how do I get out of it? And that's what you've got to be doing from turn 4 onwards, is if you're behind, yeah, you might have to just accept this game's done. But if you're going to come back into it, how are you going to come back into it? Set them up and go with it. It's hard. I never said playing tempo was easy. I said it right off the bat, this is not the easiest list to play because it requires in-depth, quick thinking to get you out of a jam. And in the late game, this is particularly prevalent because if you're behind, salvaging the game when you're on that clock can be a nightmare. Against control, they're going to start pushing back. They're going to start taking over. Against aggro, they'll have already run you over or you'll have already won anyway. And it becomes an absolute nightmare. You have to have counters in place for as many things as possible to wipe out the tempo advantage they're trying to claw back from you and take away because they're playing this reactive game. Stay proactive, stay to your plan, stay scoring points, and you should grind it out. Sometimes, because it's not based on a life total, like a number of remaining models, it's remained on points, objective points and things, you can get away with just grinding down a control list. It's hard, but it can be done. And sometimes you might just have to out-zerg the aggro list with a crazy burst. Not always easy, but it's doable. And that's about it, really. That's all there is to say about tempo and momentum in 40k. In Age of Sigmar, just to quickly sum it up, it's the same idea, but with the double turn mechanic, it can be very hard to come back from. Double turns are the giant tempo swings of that game, and they can be absolutely crippling. So if you are an AOS player who's watching this video, tempo lists are harder to build because there's so much synergy in the game. But if you want to give it a try, go ahead. Right, that's going to end off today's episode. I do hope you enjoyed the video. Make sure to give it a thumbs up if you did. Make sure to subscribe as well. I really appreciate it. Comments down below. Section is always open. Feel free to leave anything you feel like. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Michael for Tactica Imperialis, and until the next time, see you all again.